Apologetics. How can I know? Number 3, the evidence of God's working in history. Arguments for God from general revelation. Apologetics is a reasoned explanation for our faith, from the Greek words apa, which means from, and logia, which means reason. So apologetics is an argument from reason for why we believe what we believe. We saw that God has revealed himself in a general way through the world around us. He left his fingerprints on what he has made, and people have noticed. We call this general revelation. God has left his mark on the world around us, and if we look for it, we can see it. Some have tried to use human logic or observations from the world around us to argue for the existence of God. We talked about the proofs for the existence of God, and they were all about how we can see God in the world around us, or as we think about the highest thing we could think, our mind brings us to God himself. This is general revelation. Testimony of general revelation. General revelation is a fact which the Bible itself declares. God's eternal power and divine nature can be clearly seen through what has been made. Romans 1:18-20, Psalm 19, 1-4, Acts 14, Acts 17 are passages that describe this phenomenon. This revelation in the world around us is so clear, so plain, that no one can claim ignorance. They are without excuse, says Paul in Romans 1. The external evidence and the internal longing of the heart have caused people to search for more than material existence throughout history and in every culture. That's why there are so many religions in the world. People are recognizing there's something beyond just this normal, natural human life. The limitations of general revelation. Some philosopher theologians believed in natural theology, that revelation was enough, general revelation was enough, and that people could be compelled to believe through logic and observations. Some of the medieval scholastics held this view. Natural theology is naive and over-optimistic. People often ignore, disregard, or suppress what they do not want to acknowledge. People choose to not believe what they do not want to believe. Romans 1:18-23 describes how people suppress the truth and even have created lesser so-called gods to avoid acknowledging the true God. God chose to reveal himself more directly. God, in his great love, chose to not leave us to our own devices. Sin not only clouded our vision, it inspired self-deception and resistance to acknowledging God. God began to call out people to follow him, to clearly reveal his character and nature, and to reveal a plan to deal with sin and extend blessing to people from every nation. God's actions in history are called special revelation. The inspired record of this revelation is found in the Bible. Biblical faith is an historical faith. The very essence or foundation of the faith found in the Bible is based upon historical events. The Bible is not a story or a series of myths. The bulk of it purports to be a record of God's interactions with people in relationship with him. It is more than just a compendium of one person's experiences or even the teachings of a religious person or group. The Bible recounts God's dealings, not only with individual people, but also with nations. It was authored by over 40 people from all walks of life over a period of nearly 2,000 years and on 3 continents. It is a love story and historical drama that unfolds over centuries as God has sought to redeem and obtain a people for himself. Biblical faith is unlike other religions. Most religious systems are about how people can pacify an angry deity, or how they could live a good enough life to obtain positive attention from the god or goddess. People are given rules to follow, sacrifices or offerings to make, and duties or disciplines to perform in order to placate their god or to gain favor. These are the two general motivations for being religious: to get something from the god, usually power, prosperity, peace, and blessing, or to placate and avoid the wrath of their deity. Religion is virtually always a human endeavor, an attempt to obtain something from the gods by performing religious rites, practices, and services. Humankind seeks to pacify, curry favor with, or control the objects of their worship. God takes the initiative. The biblical account presents God taking the initiative to seek us. God is not waiting around for people to seek him out. From his grace, God created humans and placed them in a garden of delight. They did not have to do anything to earn that. It was gifted to them by his grace. They could simply walk with him in free and open fellowship. Though they chose to betray his kindness, from the earliest pages of human history, the Bible presents God as the one who speaks of a hope of redemption. A human child would one day defeat and crush the power of the deceiving serpent. That revelation was made in Genesis 3:15 in the garden as God speaking to them after their sin. God had a plan, and it was from his initiative that this hope would arise. But he would also use people to bring it about. Throughout history, God has sought out people to work with him to bring about his good purpose on the earth. God began with Abram. God began with Abram. Yahweh approached him. He had grown up among pagan polytheists, but Yahweh called him to leave what was familiar, his homeland, his culture, his family, and follow him. By the way, that's the essence of the call that we all receive from God. God calls us to leave what's familiar and follow him. God promised to make Abram a great nation, to bless him, and to make his name great, to cause his life and lineage to be a source of blessing to all the families on earth. Abram believed God and did as he said. Notice how different this was compared with the typical religious mindset of the time. This was initiated by Yahweh. Abram had done nothing to earn this opportunity. He was not seeking it. He did not know or have any expectation of any such a possibility. God showed Abram grace. Yahweh presented him with this opportunity. God offered to make him a significant person, a populous nation, and to benefit the entire world. All he had to do was follow him. The Exodus, calling out a nation. 400 years after Abraham, God appointed Moses to bring the Israelites out of Egypt. They had become a very large nation during the time of their sojourn there, over 2 million people. The Egyptians had become afraid of them and had enslaved them. God had spoken of this back in Genesis 15. He told Abraham, that his seed would be strangers in a land not theirs. They would be oppressed and they would be enslaved 400 years. And that God would take them out of that land in the fourth generation. Now, in fulfillment of his covenant promises, Yahweh delivered the Israelites from their bondage. He brought them out through mighty plagues that revealed his power and exposed the deities of Egypt as empty and impotent. Once again, God came to the people. He took the initiative. He did the work to give them a way out, and they took it. Then God extended the covenant offer to them. He had shown them his grace and what he's like. He asked them if they would be willing to be a people set apart for him, ones who would honor him, follow his commandments, and do his will. That's Exodus 19 and 20, where God makes the covenant with the nation of Israel at Mount Sinai. The Torah, a revelation of God's will. Also at Mount Sinai, God gave them the Torah, or instruction, so that they could carry out his will and be a holy people, set apart by their actions and way of living, to honor him and to be a light to other nations. If they would follow his Torah, he would dwell among them and continue to bless them. But if they would not obey his directions, they would experience the consequences of their actions. Ultimately, they would defile the land by their sin, and he would withdraw both his presence and his blessings. If they persisted, he would remove them from the land and scatter them among the nations. The remainder of the Old Testament is the outworking of these principles. Most direct expression of those warnings are in Deuteronomy 27 and 28. If you want to understand the Old Testament, read those two chapters and you'll see God talking about what it means to follow him and what the blessings would be and what would happen if they don't follow him and if they serve other gods, and how eventually they would be driven from the land. And those things came to pass. Decline, removal, restoration. They continued to rebel, to disregard his instructions, to turn to other gods, and throw aside the distinctives that were meant to reveal God's wisdom to the nations. He sent many prophets to warn them of the consequences and attempted to call them back, but they continued in their waywardness until finally they were defeated by their enemies and expelled from the land. However, even from the beginning, God spoke of regathering them and restoring them to the land of Abraham's promised inheritance. This process of decline, repentance, restoration, further disobedience, and waywardness took place over a period of nearly 1,000 years. God revealed in history through these interactions and events. God was revealing himself, his nature, his character, his expectations and purposes. Some key thoughts is he's not only almighty, he's also a covenant keeper. God had revealed himself to Abraham as God Almighty, El Shaddai. And when he came to Moses, he said, I revealed myself to Abram as El Shaddai, but now I'm revealing myself as Yahweh, he who is the covenant keeper. Yahweh is gracious, but his grace is a calling to follow. He's gracious, but he will not leave the guilty unpunished. That's an important realization. God has grace, but his grace is a calling for us to follow him. He has grace, but those who disregard him, those who choose the path of sin, will find that punishment will catch up with them. As he said, be sure your sin will find you out. He's holy, and he calls his people to be holy like he is. His ways are wise and good, but people could not seem to follow them because of the waywardness of their hearts. It's one of the things about the Torah. God said that if you would walk in these ways, it will be for your good. The Torah was meant to be for their benefit. Revelation of a larger plan. Throughout these centuries of dealing with the unfaithfulness of the Israelites, Yahweh continued to reveal his larger plan and purpose. Out from the roots of the devastated lineage of David, God would raise up a Messiah, an anointed one, a king. He would be a suffering servant who would die on our behalf. That's Isaiah 53. This Messiah would establish a new covenant, not like the one that the people could not keep. This covenant would change their hearts. Their hearts would be made new, and the Torah of God would be written upon them so that they could and would keep his commandments. That's Jeremiah 31, starting in verse 31, and also Ezekiel 11, 19, and 20. This will be for the vindication of God's name. Although the people of Israel had failed to keep his covenant, Yahweh will still be faithful to his word. He will restore them to their land, cleanse and transform their hearts. They will be his people, and he will be their God. Now, 586 BC is when Israel was finally driven from the land and brought into captivity to Babylon. 70 years later, they were allowed to come back. A remnant of them came back. And then they lived in the land until 70 AD, where they were expelled again. And this time it was almost 2,000 years. It was the early 1900s before they started coming back. In 1948, Israel became a state. It's important for us to see God's promises being fulfilled, his word being shown to be true, and also for us to recognize that though God has a purpose and he has a plan for Israel and he gave that land to Abraham, that he will not let the unrighteous go unpunished. Uh, God will fulfill his promises, but he also will be just in dealing with people who are unjust. There's nothing else like this. Many religious systems are based upon mere ideas, human in origin, that have no way to show that they are valid. They're just the thoughts or observations of someone who seemed to be wise. Think of Buddhism. It's just the ideas of this man they call the Buddha, the enlightened one. But there's no external evidence, no sign that this is from God. In fact, it's really not about God. Other religious systems uh, begun by people who have had a so-called supernatural encounter with an angel, a spirit, or another entity, but are only that, subjective experiences. There's no external evidence of these beings, no historical track record to follow. I was thinking of Islam and how Muhammad supposedly had an encounter with Gabriel in a cave. There's no evidence of that. There's nothing tangible. Or of Mormonism, Joseph Smith having an encounter with an angel and receiving these golden plates that supposedly that were covered with Egyptian hieroglyphics that he translated that became the Book of Mormon. There are no golden plates. There's no sign that this was a real encounter, just someone's subjective experience. However, God has painstakingly revealed himself over centuries of history, leaving a verifiable track record. He has communicated his love initiative, his grace, his standards, his holiness, and prophetically pointed the way to the Messiah who gives us life and changes hearts. Fingerprints in history. Not only has God left his fingerprints in the created world, he's also left a record of his dealings with people in history. We have written texts, artifacts, and contemporaneous records that document the credibility of the testimonies of those who interacted with God. Archaeology has been able to confirm place names, events, and even many of the people who are part of these accounts. There has never been an example of a proven historical error in the biblical accounts. Archaeology has only confirmed them. And this reality, these artifacts and uh, records and documents, there's nothing like this in any other ancient religion. View of the future from the ancient past. In addition to confirming past events, God has given us a detailed description from ancient times of things that he was going to do in the future. These prophetic declarations describe the future of individuals, cities, and nations centuries before they would come to pass. Most importantly, they describe the life, ministry, death, and resurrection of the Messiah in great detail. Only God can do this. Nothing like this exists in any other faith. So as we go on and we study apologetics, we're going to take this historical route. We're going to follow these examples to show that the testimonies that are in our Bibles, the accounts and the records that are in our Bibles, are substantiated by records, by texts, by artifacts, by place names, by things in the historical record that have been found by archaeology. It's interesting that 50 years ago, when I was a student, many of these things weren't even available. But in the last 50 years, there's just so much that God has chosen to reveal. Week after week, there are new discoveries that support the Bible. And as it mentioned, there has never been any solid biblical or never been any archaeological evidence that directly contradicts the Bible. It only has substantiated it. There's no other faith that has this kind of corroboration.